Deliverer's Home is the next installment of the Deliverers series developed by Kyokan Interactive. This comes after a successful Kickstarter campaign that raised €116,000 to be used to fund the project moving forward. Before I commence with the video, I should state that I am one of those who backed the Kickstarter. I went with the pledge that gives me access to a prototype demo made by the developers. This demo is essentially a proof of concept of what the final game aims to tackle, both from a narrative sense and a gameplay approach. Because of this, my opinions aren't going to be as definitive as they normally are, considering the fact that everything we see here will probably not be in the final product, at least not in the way it looks here. It is very early development, I cannot state that enough. Despite all of that, I am a huge fan of this series. I believe in what it sets out to be, a realistic and authentic style science fiction universe that showcases what future space expeditions may be like, while also providing compelling stories, as well as a thought-provoking commentary on the human impact on our planet and how it can push us to desperate circumstances. Deliverer's Home appears to continue most of these themes, only this time it goes even further. Well, literally. We've been to the moon and we've been to Mars. This time we are leaving our solar system altogether, travelling to a whole new planet light years away. Another aspect that stands out is that this game takes place hundreds of years after Deliverer's Mars, which was something I honestly wasn't expecting. Jumping to the 23rd century, you are tasked with travelling to a newly discovered planet whose climate and conditions are almost perfectly suited for human colonization. This is where the big plot twist comes in. Once you arrive, you almost immediately realise that this planet has been visited before, by other humans. The remains of a widespread settlement can be found. The creepy part, there are no signs of life anywhere. It's as if these people just vanished into thin air. Your mission quickly becomes something much bigger. While your primary concern is to secure a site for settlement as per your mission brief, you also need to find out who these people who came before were, what they were doing, and what ended up happening to them. As is the case with all the other Deliverers games, there is a grand mystery to solve, and while it may seem to tread some familiar waters, the scale of it is much bigger. So I've given you the basic overview of what Deliverer's Home appears to be about. All of this information can be found on the Kickstarter page, which I will link in the description. You can give it a read for yourself. For now, I'm just going to talk about the prototype demo itself and what it contains. As I vaguely surmised before, the demo feels like a showcase of ideas. You explore a world that has very clearly defined segments that give you opportunities to explore the main mechanics of the game. For example, there's a location that has climbing walls that allow you to utilize the climbing mechanics. Very straightforward. On top of that, you have a series of objectives that take you across the entirety of the map. The demo as a whole is presented from the perspective of you arriving on this planet for the first time, so your overall goal is to try and find any leads as to where the original colonists could have disappeared to. Along the way, you travel to various bases and facilities that test you in different ways. The one with the climbing walls I mentioned earlier is an example of that. The demo concludes in a not-so-conclusive way, instead opting to build intrigue into where the final game is going to go. It ends on a promising note instead of a concise one. In regards to the gameplay, there is a lot that has been seen before. The aforementioned climbing, though without the pickaxes this time it seems. You're able to climb and vault over a wider variety of objects, which is new. The scanning, laser tool and drone companion remain untouched, as well as the abstract cutscene presentation. That last bit I am very happy about. Parkour challenges make a return with an engaging sequence near the end of the demo requiring you to make specifically timed jumps. Vehicle driving is also present, something that's made even more fulfilling compared to previous games due to the larger environments resulting in greater distances between objectives. What could be Deliverer's Home's biggest introduction is its crafting system. There's a bigger emphasis on exploration, and one of the rewards for that is finding a plethora of different materials nestled across the world. As far as the demo is concerned, you can craft things directly related to your main objectives, such as machine components, as well as making things for personal use. What's on show here is rather minimal, but it's a taste of what is to potentially come later down the line, and I think it's a really good idea, both in a mechanical sense, and also in a way for the series to naturally progress. It's also something that could add to the complexity of the puzzles, with the need to create specific tools to do certain things. There's already an example of that in the demo when it comes to fixing a radio. As well as being scattered on the ground, resources can be found hidden away inside chests that need to be opened by using the laser tool. It's stuff that feels very reminiscent of a survival game, so I'm curious to see if anything else in that vein gets implemented here. In regards to visuals, each game in the Deliverers series has a colour scheme. With Deliverers the Moon, it was a mix of whites and greys. Deliverers Mars was orange and red. Deliverers Home has gone for a dark blue and green mix, generated by the world's Aurora Borealis. The level is big. I wouldn't call it an open world, but it is open to a wide degree. It can take a bit of time getting from one place to another, depending on how far apart your objectives are. There are different regions to explore, each with their own crafting ingredients, set pieces, and terrain. From a narrative context, outside of the main objective, you have dozens of points of interest to scan, world-building elements to find, and also chat logs and notes left behind. You can view all of these in your personal log, with annotations provided as well. That more or less covers all of the content on offer at the moment. Like I said, it's a showcase of ideas that incorporates most mechanics from the previous two games. It's clear that Deliverers Home aims to build up from what came before it, while also giving us hints on what new things there will be to experience. That isn't to say there won't be anything else outside what we see here, that's just what we are privy to at this current time. So, what did I think of it? Well, for the most part, I liked it a lot. One thing that leaped out at me pretty early on, which is also something the other games excelled at, was the atmosphere. It's honestly a bit creepy, to the point where it almost feels as if you're being watched. It makes sense too, there's nobody else here, just empty buildings and abandoned equipment laying around. The developer's approach to level design continues to be on point. However, my biggest concern is the decision to have a more open environment. Perhaps this is only going to be specific sections of the game. It's difficult to decipher at the moment. My reason for having this concern mainly revolves around authenticity. Authenticity has always been a strong suit for these games. Settlements felt realistic, and everything connected together seamlessly. If we're going for a semi-open world approach, that becomes a lot harder to achieve, and the bases in this demo do feel a bit odd in regards to their placement. Like I said, however, this is a concern rather than a complaint, because I realise that there's a good chance the final game will look completely different. In terms of my critiques of what I've played through so far, I only have a couple, and they both involve the visual department. Firstly, I think it looks too dark. I'm not the biggest fan of the colour scheme. I do like the Aurora Borealis, it looks pretty, but on the ground everything is too shaded. In fact, there were quite a few times where I struggled to see where I was going, and the torch didn't really help much. Secondly, the world feels very Earth-like. It doesn't really feel very alien to me. Everything about the environment is familiar. It's not exactly a glaring issue I have, but it's something that's hard to ignore, especially the more you play. Both of these issues are likely going to be resolved through development anyway, but in playing Devil's Advocate, you could pertain the first issue to the time of day, and with the second issue it was only one level, so there could be a wider variety of environments on offer, similar to Deliverers Mars. I have no complaints in regards to the story side of things, well, at least from what has been presented so far. I think it's an incredibly promising setup for a narrative, and it does feel like a natural next step for the series, even if it wasn't what I was expecting. It may be treading familiar territory, in that it involves exploring abandoned bases, but Deliverers Mars had that and built on it, by adding a personal context to the story. I'm sure Deliverer's Home will do something similar. Gameplay-wise, I'll have to wait and see. All of the reintroduced mechanics work fine, but that is to be expected. I think adding a crafting system is a great idea that could spice things up, but I'm not sure if that's enough on its own. It'll entirely depend on what effects craftable items can have on the gameplay as a whole. I do also think the crafting menu needs working on. The UI was quite confusing, and I was confused by it for a while. If this is what the gameplay is going to involve, then whether or not it's enough will be completely dependent on its implementation. To the developers' credit, they succeeded at this when it came to both games in the series, so a part of me doubts it's going to disappoint. All in all, I think the prototype demo provides a decent enough dip into each of the game's core elements. It may not have any dialogue yet, but its story is teased through traditional world-building elements and subdued cutscenes, and what information is provided on the Kickstarter page does a lot to garner my interest. While I do think it could look more vibrant, its visual fidelity still does enough to impress, and the world as a whole is intriguing. There's plenty of locations to explore, some of which are quietly tucked away and contain their own rewards. The gameplay treads a familiar path, but its introduction of crafting has opened up a branch of new possibilities for the developers to experiment with, and I think that in itself is pretty exciting. I do hope we get at least one zero-gravity section though, for old time's sake. I doubt we're going to get any major developments for some time, but now that the game has been fully funded, it's full steam ahead for production. I'll be keeping a close eye on how that goes, and if I get to experience any more of Deliverer's Home, I'll be sure to make a video on it. If you have any questions about the demo that I haven't answered, then, well, be sure to ask away in the comments. In the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more videos about indie games, then be sure to subscribe. Let me know what you would like to see a video of next. Until the next one, I'll see you soon. Bye.